What if the whispers in a library could teach you everything? What if they gave you wisdom, charm, and power but slowly erased you? Tonight, in Whispered Realms, we step into the shadows of a forgotten library where knowledge has a price far greater than death itself. Leo was a boy made of quiet. He sat on the edges of playgrounds and in the back of classrooms, a ghost in a world of noise. He was not lonely, not really. He was simply unseen. One day, while wandering through the forgotten part of town, he stumbled upon a building that seemed to have been swallowed by time. A sign, half hidden by ivy, read, "The Library of Lost Souls." The door creaked open, revealing a cavern of forgotten stories. Dust motes danced in a single shaft of light that pierced the gloom. The air was thick with the scent of old paper and silence. But as Leo stepped inside, the silence was broken. A faint, almost imperceptible sound, like the rustling of leaves, began to fill the air. It was a whisper, and it seemed to come from the books themselves. "Welcome, Leo," the whispers breathed. "We have been waiting for you." The whispers grew louder, clearer. "Read me," they urged. "I know the secrets of the stars." He opened another, and the whispers promised him the knowledge of ancient languages. "I can teach you to speak to the wind." He spent hours, days, weeks in the library. The whispers were his friends, his teachers, his family. They filled the quiet spaces inside him with a torrent of information. He learned about history, science, art, and philosophy. He learned to play the piano and to paint with light. When he returned to the world, he was no longer the quiet boy. He was brilliant, witty, and charismatic. People were drawn to him, captivated by his knowledge and his stories. He was the center of attention, the life of every party. He had everything he had ever wanted. But the whispers came with him. They were in his head now, a constant hum beneath his thoughts. "Tell them about the Roman Empire," they would say. "Explain the theory of relativity." He was a vessel for their knowledge, a conduit for their words. At first, he didn't mind. He was happy to share their wisdom. But as time went on, the whispers began to change. They were no longer just suggestions. They were demands. "You must tell them this. You must do that." They began to interrupt his own thoughts, to finish his sentences for him. He tried to ignore them, to push them away, but they were relentless. They were a torrent, a flood, drowning out his own voice. He started to forget things. His own memories, his own thoughts, were being replaced by the whispers' knowledge. He forgot his mother's favorite song. He forgot the name of his childhood dog. He was becoming a library of other people's stories, a book with no author. He was a puppet, and the whispers were the strings. He tried to go back to the library, to ask them to stop, but the building was gone. In its place was an empty lot, overgrown with weeds. The library had never existed, or so it seemed. The whispers were all he had left. They told him what to eat, what to wear, who to talk to. They were his entire world. He was no longer Leo. He was a vessel, a walking, talking encyclopedia of borrowed knowledge. He was a ghost in his own life, a puppet dancing to a silent tune. He was trapped in a prison of his own making, a gilded cage of knowledge and love that had turned to ash. He tried to write, to create something of his own, but the words were not his. They were the whisper's words, flowing from his pen like a river of borrowed thoughts. He tried to draw, to paint, but the images were not his. They were the whisper's images, a gallery of stolen art. He was a mirror, reflecting the world back at itself, but with no reflection of his own. One day, he was sitting in class, the whispers humming in his ears, when he felt a strange sensation. A small, fluttering whisper, different from the others, was trying to escape from his school bag. He felt a moment of hope, a flicker of his old self. He reached for the bag, his heart pounding in his chest. Was this it? Was this his chance to break free? He unzipped the bag, and the whisper escaped. It wasn't a whisper of knowledge or love. It was a whisper of pure, unadulterated malice. It was a whisper of the library's true nature. It was a whisper that promised to consume not just his mind, but his very soul. The whisper was a dark, swirling mist, and it was now free. It was a whisper of the library's true nature. It was a whisper that promised to consume not just his mind, but his very soul. The whisper was a dark, swirling mist, and it was now free. Leo thought he was just a boy learning secrets. Instead, he became their prisoner. Would you open the book, if it meant losing your soul? Let me know in the comments below. And if the whispers have followed you this far, hit subscribe before they find another voice to haunt.